Hi crafters, and welcome to Technique Tuesday. This is Creative Moments by G, and I'm G. Do you sometimes get tired of having to get your markers, get them all out, and they just take up all this space and you're tired of having to color? Well, I know how to solve that problem. Today's technique is using a stencil to color your background image and then stamp over it. So let's head down to the crafting table and let's get started. First, you're going to need your base card. And I want to remind you, all the measurements will be listed over on creativemomentsbygee.com, and so you don't have to worry about taking them down. But create your base card, and you also want a mat on the front. Now look at this cute little border that I went ahead and I put on our mat that we're going to do our blending on. Now this comes from a kit called Happiness Abounds, and it has these adorable little borders right here. Now to do this technique, you need a die that cuts out a stencil for you so that you can blend. But let's go ahead and lay down some paper, because when you're blending, you typically go off the mat, so you need somewhere to color. Now, I went ahead and used my dies. I cut out these stencils. I'm going to do some flowers and then some leaves. I have my blending brushes. And the colors for the flowers, I'm going to use Calypso Coral and Bermuda Bay, one of my very favorite colors. So I'm going to just open those up. And I also need to be mindful of where I'm going to stamp my sentiment, because I want to place the flowers around the sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment first. And I'm going to stamp it in Night of Navy. So tap, tap, tap. Look at this beautiful sentiment. Now I'm going to decide where I want to place my flowers. So I know that I'm going to go close to the sentiment. So I'm going to come off about right here and place one big flower. Now I want the dark to be around the edges. So I'm going to use my Bermuda Bay. Just tap, tap, tap. And I want it to be a vibrant color, so I'm not going to blend lightly. I'm going to put my pressure right there on the tip, and I'm going to go ahead and blend really dark. Now remember, you're just creating a background. You are going to stamp over this with the flower stamp. And it's really so nice because you already have your background colored. Okay, and now I'm going to bring in my Calypso Coral. I'm going to put this back, and I'm just going to blend right there in the center. Okay, now I'm going to repeat this process a little bit over here in the corner, because remember, I'm going to bring in some leaves. Now I'm bringing in Parakeet Party for the leaves and Garden Green. And now the magic comes in, because we are going to stamp our flower. Look at this beautiful flower. Now what makes this so special is it's an outline of a flower, so that you can really see the area that you blended. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp in Night of Navy. So just line up your flower. Look at that. And look at this beautiful mat that you were able to create very quickly using your blends as the background instead of having to use your markers or your paint brushes. Now let's add this to the card and see how pretty it is. Now, one of the tips that I like to do is I like to go ahead and run the mat through just an embossing folder that gives it a little texture. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm running it through one of the basic 3Ds from Stampin' Up. And it just gives it that little bit of texture that causes it not to look so flat. So let's get that added to the front of our card. Now, because this is a 3D folder, you want to make sure that you have enough glue on it to get into those crevices. Now we're going to add our mat on the inside. And you can add whatever image you want. You can go ahead and blend it again. I would recommend that you do the blending before you put your mat down. And here is our first card. Look at that. Just beautiful. And really, it's all about the coordination of colors too, right? We picked the colors that match the card stock and to create this beautiful card. Now we're going to make one more card. And we're using a different stamp set. Now for this card, we're going to use special moments, and we're going to stamp for someone who is wonderful in each and every way. And for our flower, we are using hand pinned because it has this beautiful die cut that will cut out into the paper and create your stencil. Plus, it has these gorgeous stamps that will stamp over it, but it's an outline. And the outline is so important because it allows you to see that beautiful background that you've created. So for this card, we're going to use a top fold card. Go ahead and cut your mats for the inside. And we have some DSP that we're going to use for this. So we can go ahead and lay this down. Now, because I have selected this beautiful blue, we're going to use Night of Navy with Calypso Coral for our flowers so that we can coordinate all our colors. So here is the stencil that I've created. We're going to bring in our paper again because remember, when you stencil, sometimes you go off the paper. Now for this, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use some repositional tape. Just so that it doesn't move. I'm just going to put that tape right down the middle and put it right on my paper that I'm using. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add some tape to the back of this and put it on my table. And that way, this is going to stay in place too. So the only thing I'm moving will be my stencil. Now remember, the first thing you always want to do is stamp your sentiment because you need to know how to build your scene around your sentiment. So I'm going to bring in Night of Navy again. And I'm going to leave that open, and I'm also going to open up my Calypso Coral. Now I need to decide where I want to place this. So I want to go about right here for the first one. And I'm going to do some green leaves, and then I'm going to also bring in the blue. So we'll do a little bit of green. And remember, you're going to stamp over this with your flower. So, you know, it looks very different initially when you first start blending. And then when you stamp over it with your flower, it just creates this beautiful scene. So let's bring in our blue. And now our Calypso coral. Oh, look how beautiful that is. Now let's do one right at the bottom, but let's change it up just a little bit. We'll have it coming like this. Now you can see that my pressure that I'm putting on this blending brush is quite heavy because I want the colors to be rich and vibrant. Now look at that. Beautiful. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and use the stencil from the other one and just bring in some leaves on the side. Now stay with us because we have 3 more cards to show you where we use this technique. So let's go ahead and bring in our stamp. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the leaves first, and we'll stamp them in Night of Navy. Now we're going to bring in our big flower and get that stamped. Tap, tap, tap. I am loving these colors. Now look at this. Now, on the other card, we decided to go ahead and run it through the embossing folder to give it some depth, but this DSP already creates that. So we're just going to lay that down. Put our sentiment card on the inside. And I would recommend that you go ahead and stamp something here, whether it's a sentiment or maybe create some additional flowers. But for us, we are just working in today's Technique Tuesday on how to create a fantastic background without using all your markers and your paint brushes very quickly. Now look at that. Love that coloring. Now remember I said we would have just a very different kind of card to show you. Here is one that we used a different stamp set and we just placed it in the middle. Look at that. Once again, we coordinated our colors to let it flow. Here is a different version of this one. Which one do you like better? The pink or the blue? I'm in love with this Night of Navy flower. And finally, we could not leave Technique Tuesday without coloring a sunflower. Love our sunflowers. We did the same process. We used Pumpkin Pie and Daffodil Delight and just blended inside the stencil and stamped over it. Well, we hope you enjoyed our Technique Tuesday. We love this technique. It makes coloring your images so quick and easy. Take a moment, leave a comment. Let us know if you love this technique or which is your favorite flower. We want you to go out and have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.